Horrified witnesses reacting in shock after an anti-Israel suspect walks into a Jewish museum in D.C., guns down two Israeli diplomats out front in cold blood.
In any trial, witnesses play a crucial role in shaping the outcome.
Jurors in the Karen Reed murder retrial are hearing from a new witness. Massachusetts State Trooper Evan Brent is on the stand. He's testifying about working on the investigation into Boston police officer John O'Keefe's death.
In this case, the testimony of one key witness would change everything.
Yesterday, about that foul-mouthed parrot that apparently witnessed his owner's murder and mimics what may have been Martin Durham's last words. It's a story that has already spread across the globe.
The witness, who had been at the scene of the crime, was initially hesitant to come forward. However, after much consideration and persuasion from the prosecution, they decided to step into the courtroom. Their recollection of the events that transpired on that fateful night was both detailed and precise. This testimony was critical in filling the gaps left by the lack of physical evidence, shedding light on the sequence of events leading up to the crime. Little did anyone know, this witness would be the linchpin that turned the case around. Their bravery would set the stage for a dramatic courtroom revelation. Key testimony as the witness took the stand, the atmosphere in the courtroom grew heavy with anticipation. The defense and prosecution teams braced themselves, knowing this testimony could be the turning point in the entire trial. The witness, a seemingly ordinary individual, began recounting the events of that fateful day with remarkable clarity. What they shared would leave the courtroom stunned. The witness spoke of a moment that no one had considered before. They detailed how they had seen something in the background that everyone else had missed, an innocent detail that held far greater significance than anyone had realized. Their words were direct and unflinching as they described the scene, offering an entirely new perspective on the events in question. The prosecution, who had been confident in their case, now found themselves on the defensive. The witness's testimony didn't just shift the direction of the trial. It cast doubt on the key evidence that had been presented up until that point. With this new information, the defense had a fighting chance to poke holes in the prosecution's story, and the tables had turned in an unexpected and dramatic fashion. This key testimony would go on to influence the case more than anyone could have predicted, and soon, the trial was no longer a mere formality but a fierce battle for the truth. Shocking moment, the pivotal moment in the trial came when the defense attorney made a bold move, asking the witness one final question that no one had expected. The witness, a normally composed individual, hesitated for a brief moment, then revealed something that left everyone in the courtroom stunned. Their statement contradicted a crucial piece of evidence that had been the cornerstone of the prosecution's case. With a calm voice, the witness explained how they had seen something entirely different from what the prosecution had presented. This revelation not only cast doubt on the reliability of the evidence, but also sparked a ripple of disbelief throughout the room. Even the judge, usually composed, momentarily paused to process the gravity of the statement. The prosecution, caught off guard by this unexpected turn, scrambled to respond. The weight of this new information created a palpable tension in the courtroom as the defense attorney seized the opportunity to highlight the inconsistencies in the prosecution's narrative. It was clear that this moment, this unexpected twist, had the potential to change the course of the trial. And the stakes had never been higher. As the courtroom sat in stunned silence, it became evident that the witness's words were not just a game changer. They had completely altered the dynamics of the trial. Everyone, from the jurors to the audience, was now forced to reconsider everything they thought they knew about the case. Turning point, the courtroom was charged with an air of disbelief as the defense presented its rebuttal, citing the shocking testimony that had just been revealed. This was the turning point in the trial. What had seemed like a straightforward case suddenly took an unexpected shift. The witness's words had not only contradicted key evidence, but had also introduced an entirely new theory of the crime that no one had considered. As the defense began to dismantle the prosecution's case, it became clear that the previous narrative was now in question. The prosecution, unable to adequately address the new revelations, struggled to maintain their hold on the trial. The witness's testimony had uncovered flaws that at first seemed insignificant but now appeared critical to the case. Each new piece of information layered on top of the previous one, weakening the prosecution's argument. The turning point wasn't just about the witness's words. It was about how the jury, the judge, and everyone involved began to question the integrity of the investigation itself. With every minute that passed, the scales of justice tipped further in favor of the defense. The room was filled with a sense of urgency, as the stakes had never been higher. What had once seemed like a certain conviction was now teetering on the edge of uncertainty. The trial had entered a new phase, one that would forever change the outcome. Cross-examination. As the turning point unfolded, the defense knew that this was their moment to strike. The witness's shocking testimony had already created doubt, but the cross-examination was where the real battle would take place. The prosecution, still reeling from the unexpected twist, now faced the daunting task of attempting to discredit the witness's claims. With a calm yet aggressive tone, the prosecutor began to poke holes in the witness's statements. They questioned every detail, pushing for inconsistencies, hoping to unravel the credibility of the testimony that had caused such disruption. The room grew tense as the prosecutor's questions became sharper, each one designed to expose any flaw in the witness's recollection of events. However, despite the intensity of the cross-examination, the witness remained composed, their answers steady and unwavering. It was clear that the witness had been prepared, and with each question that was answered confidently, the prosecution's attempt to weaken their credibility started to backfire. Jurors watched closely, weighing every word, and it became evident that the defense had solidified their position. What was intended to be a battle for the witness's truth had instead become a showcase of the prosecution's inability to regain control. The cross-examination, instead of salvaging the case, reinforced the turning point that had already shifted the course of the trial. The witness's testimony was now more solid than ever, and the momentum had fully swung in favor of the defense. Verdict outcome. After weeks of tense courtroom drama, emotional testimony, and intense cross-examinations, the moment everyone had been waiting for arrived. The verdict. The judge called the courtroom to order, and the jury had reached a decision. The question that hung in the air now had an answer: would the witness's shocking testimony, which had flipped the entire case on its head, lead to a conviction or an acquittal? The jury deliberations had been long and filled with uncertainty. They had been tasked with sifting through the conflicting stories, the unexpected twists, and the mounting doubts raised by the witness's words. What had initially seemed like an open and shut case was now a complex puzzle. The defense had effectively cast enough doubt to make the prosecution's case seem less certain, and the jury struggled with the weight of this new information. Finally, the decision was read aloud. The defendant, once thought to be guilty beyond a shadow of a doubt, was acquitted. The jury had concluded that the prosecution's case was no longer strong enough to justify a conviction, and the key testimony from the witness had ultimately proven to be the deciding factor. As the courtroom erupted in a mix of gasps and murmurs, the defense team shared a moment of quiet victory. The shocking testimony that had turned the trial around had not only saved the defendant, but had also exposed the flaws in the case against them. The verdict marked the end of a harrowing journey for the accused, but it also highlighted the power of one key witness. Their words, seemingly simple at first, had ultimately led to a stunning legal outcome. The trial would be remembered not just for its legal intricacies, but for how a single piece of testimony could shift the entire course of justice.